Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Nonprofit U, a forum where nonprofit stakeholders can share lessons learned and discuss the latest developments in the industry. My name is Valerie, Leonard, your host. I'm a consultant to nonprofits, and I specialize in community and organizational development. I work with nonprofit organizations to help them make a stronger impact to their clients and communities. You can find Nonprofit U on Facebook and Twitter. I encourage you to follow us and to comment early and often using the hashtags NonprofitU, Cara Program, and Transformative Work. You can also leave comments on blogtalkradio.com/nonprofit_U. The chat room is open, and you can post comments and questions. In order to use the chat room, you must open a listener-only account. You'll find a link to open the account on a page for this episode, and you can also email me questions at consulting@valeriefleonard.com. We'll be taking questions by phone and from our chat room at about the 30-minute mark or so. The call-in number is 347-884-8121. Again, that number is 347-884-8121. Today's topic is transforming lives through jobs and social enterprise. We'll talk about the Cara program's training and workforce development programs as well as their social enterprises. And then again, we encourage you to call in with questions at the 30-minute mark. You can start posting in the chat room right now if you'd like to, or you can email me at consulting@valeriefleonard.com. If you want to participate in the live chat, you must open a listener-only account, and the link is found on the episode page right up under the chat box. The call-in number is 347-884-8121. Nonprofit and community development professionals, as well as policymakers, especially those who are working in workforce development, you're encouraged to call in and share your stories, share your strategies, as well as your successes. Today's guest is Jessie Teverbaugh, student in alumni affairs with Cara. And as a 15-year Cara veteran, Jessie is a firm believer in the notion that we transform our lives by transforming others. Cara helps men and women affected by poverty and often the interrelated challenges of recovery, domestic violence, episodic homelessness, and incarceration to get and keep good jobs, and more importantly, rebuild hope, self-esteem, and opportunity for themselves and their families in the process. Jessie oversees the learning experience for all Cara candidates in their journey to employment and in their engagement as alumni as their jobs evolve into careers. Jessie is uniquely qualified for this position, being a graduate of Cara himself, and he's also worked both as a trainer and as a director in Cara's flagship social enterprise, Clean Slate. Cara sees over 1,000 candidates per year, and Jessie's coaching handprint is on nearly every one. So, good afternoon, Jessie.
Good afternoon.
It's indeed a pleasure to have you as a guest today. And before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about Cara and how you came to work for them? In fact, I remember meeting you, back in 2005 or 2006, something like that. You had your team out in the Kenwood, Oakland area. So can you give us an overview and tell us how you came to work with them?
Yeah, like you just mentioned in the opening, again, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on and maybe give out any type of information that I can maybe break down and make it easier to understand on what services and what we do provide to the community. But
awesome.
Cara in the layman's terms is a boot camp, a series of boot camps and businesses that get people back to work who have been affected by poverty and homelessness. I know you did read off some of the things, the obvious that most people might think of that might cause poverty and homelessness, such as domestic violence, incarceration, substance abuse, lack of education. But one of the myths that we would like to dispel is that, poverty and homelessness does not discriminate. And there are individuals who are coming from a background of higher education and life's experiences and good work experience and things like that. But when life gets and decides to throw us a sucker punch and decides to knock the wind out of our sails, it does not discriminate. It crosses all racial barriers, religious barriers, gender barriers. It does not matter. And so over the years, we've kind of had this faith of what homelessness looks like. And a lot of people tend to think, well, it's that person that lives in Lower Wacker. And actually, it's that person that lives right next door to you. And so that's one of the things that we would like to open up the doors and understanding, because sometimes the people will hear about Cara and say, oh, well, it must be that organization for those people who have convictions in their background, or must be those people who might have some substance abuse history. Are we that organization? Absolutely. But we are so much more than just that. Or for anybody who is going through some extensive challenges to employment, to begin to get some employment hope, to get some self-esteem back, and to get back into the game, to get your mojo back.
Yes. Are you a blues fan by any chance?
I am. Blues, step, yes.
Yeah, when you said mojo, I got to thinking about Muddy Waters and all those guys. So how did you come to work for Cara?
So like I just mentioned too, and how apropos I just kind of introduced that, because, again, it does not discriminate. I found myself a little over 15 years ago. I had gone through some life experiences that kind of literally knocked the wind out of my sails. I mean, it just knocked me on my butt. Had worked for Nabisco for 18 years, wound up without that job, home being foreclosed on. And like I mentioned, some life experiences that I were going through that were really tough for me to get through emotionally, spiritually, financially, all of those things. And I found out that that I had to reinvent myself, and was in on a presentation that Cara had put on, and I'm like, wow, it sounds great. And when I happened to come into Cara, when they were a very small boutique type of organization that operated out of the basement of Old St. Pat's Church. But the idea and the concepts were just starting to formulate about these life skills, these transformative things that human beings need, other than just slapping and attaching a job to it. Some of this industry, a lot of times people want to assist individuals, but it's not so much of helping, it's about empowering. And you can't just give somebody a job and expect that they can ride off into the sunset and everything can be right. You can't solve your problems with the same mindset that created them. So if you come in with a set of problems and issues and you don't begin to change the belief system and change the thinking of a human being, just put them in another environment, it's not going to do anything. And most times it can either exacerbate or make the situation even worse. So the idea of transforming and changing one's belief system and the way somebody thinks of how do I get up out of these circumstances and situations that I'm in. And so I came in and I was like, wow, that's amazing to me. It sounded like just what I needed. And I was hook, line, and sinker. I drank the Kool-Aid and I was hooked. And from then on, it was a conspiracy on my part to find some kind of way to become a part of this organization. And so I went from student to student liaison, and then student liaison to assistant trainer, and then trainer, and so on and so on.
And now you're director of student affairs, right, and alumni affairs, student and alumni affairs?
Correct.
Okay. Oh, that's amazing. That's really good stuff. So one of the challenges that nonprofit organizations have, especially in this environment, is justifying their existence to donors and then potential donors. You know, they have a difficult time quantifying outcomes and impact. I had a chance to look at your website and see what Cara has done. You know, you guys do a really, really good job of quantifying the impact, you know, so that folks like me who are into big data, you know, we really get a charge out of looking at the pretty pictures and the numbers.
Absolutely.
And I include a handout. I don't know if you have that handout in front of you. There's a link to a handout that talks about your social investment. Will you care
return
to
on investment?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and you're not alone, Valerie. I'm just like you. Pie charts and numbers and all those kind of things make my eyes roll back in my head as well. But it's kind of understanding them, and so you can kind of articulate that to those funders and those people who believe in the same kind of things that you're wanting to accomplish as well. And it's basically to return on investment, you know. So for every dollar that somebody contributes or to our organization, there's almost a $6 return to society.
Wow.
And part of how we look at that and where we get that number is we kind of take all the incomes of all the individual participants who are contributing to society's income taxes through Social Security, and what we're avoiding, what social gain is then, so we take away from what they are not now taking away from food stamps or public assistance and all of those kinds. So that's kind of where we get the numbers that's on that sheet that you have. But in the basic, purest form, for every dollar that's invested, our students, our participants, for every dollar invested, it's a $6 return on society.
Wow. And for those who are listening and, you know, don't have access to the handout, I promise you I'm not going to read every number. You can get the link and look at this, but, you know, I just think it's astounding that in just 1 year, this past year, $6.2 million in social impact. That means what you guys got about $1 million into the program, a little bit over $1 million, and you were able to generate from that $1 million just for the workforce development program over $6.2 million.
Yeah, and again, just to reiterate and make that number kind of reach out and what that actually means. So that's what now students are paying into income taxes now. What they're paying into Social Security now is what they're not bringing in, withdrawing from the system through food stamps or public assistance and things like that. So that's where that number, that bottom line, comes from.
And just to give people, I guess, a greater appreciation, I remember when I was running a small nonprofit, we were patting ourselves on the back if we were able to get 4-to-1 leverage. You know, we're really doing something. But you guys are getting nearly 6-to-1. So that is really huge, and I really, really appreciate your taking the time to, you know, to talk about this. And, you know, and I thought it was important that we share that, because so many people at the grassroots level, you know, we talk about things like the number of people we serve, but we kind of leave it at that. You know, the conversation has gone beyond, you know, the number of people served to, you know, so what have you done for me lately? How is this actually a return on my dollar? So I just really appreciate that.
I would also add in there, too, that there's probably a portion of there for recidivism as well, for those individuals that might, because of poverty and lack of employment, are not being incarcerated and not being a burden on the system as well. So all of those things kind of play a toll into that number.
Mhm. Okay, and then, the second handout that really jumped out and grabbed me was your service delivery model.
Mm-hmm.
It looks to me like you go beyond, traditional case management. This looks very, very comprehensive. And, again, for those of you who are listening, and if you have access to the episode page, if you go to the comments section, there is a link to the service delivery model, and if you can't catch up, you can catch us later. The link will be there, even when we're off. But I just wanted Jesse to give us a sense for what your model is, the Cara way of doing things with respect to holistic workforce development and social innovation.
Yeah. Right. So I know just looking at it, it could kind of be daunting and overwhelming, but once you get to understand and know it, it does truly make sense, and it's kind of come about kind of organically. We did not begin this way some 26 years ago. A lot of the practices and things that we are going by today are through trial and error, and what we have found out the needs of human beings, and we usually tailor our services toward human being needs and the changes that happen throughout the years of life. And so if you look at it, it's somebody might look from left to right that it's kind of a linear kind of thing, like through recruitment, a student goes in and then they just come out on the other side through placement, retention, and career advancement. Life is not that simple. Human beings are not that simple. We're not linear. We don't just go in a certain track. When you kind of maybe came into this world, you had the idea that you were going to go a certain way, but you got into this thing, this wheel, which is that center called life, and things begin to happen. And also, Cara is not a cookie cutter type of program that one fits all. And so as understanding that over the years, how do we design an enterprise that is inclusive as opposed to exclusive and keeping people out? And so part of this wheel is once you go in through recruitment, we have these 4 entities. We have our classic model that we've been going since the beginning of Cara. We also have Cara workshops because everybody does not fit this classic model. Everybody's schedule does not fit that they can attend classes through our classic model from 8:30 to 5 every day. And so we do have workshops where people can get this social and emotional training through workshops. Then we also have through our social enterprises, Clean Slate and Cara Connects, our temp agency, where we can provide experiential type of learning through transitional jobs. And so once you enter recruitment and you have been screened and decided which one of these portals are best fitted for your needs at that time, that's when you begin the training and coaching model and the leadership development that all students that enter that inner circle receive. And from being in that inner circle, you then, through competencies, whether they be workplace competencies like time management, conflict management, team building, communication, and professionalism, that is how you gauge to get in our placement pool. That's how you gauge to earn the right to be sent out to our employment partners and then get placed into our employment partners. And then from there, we have our retention services that it's not just as important that you get that job, but now how do we support you so we can sustain that job and stay on that job for at least a year? That's part of one of our agreements to our employment partners and to our students as well. It's not just that we'll get a job, but we will, part of graduating from Cara, quote unquote, is that you remain on that job for a year. And that's where those retention services come into bear.
Great. That is excellent. So let me back up. You mentioned that you had gone through the program, and you mentioned, too, that for you there were a number of needs that you felt that you had, some of which were spiritual and and emotional. Where does that come into play in this model? Do you guys refer out to different agencies who might be able to help people with that, with those kinds of needs? And as you said, not everybody has the same need.
So actually, we do have again, this has have grown organically over the years. We do have a resource development manager. So an individual that might have some other needs that if they don't get a grip on those needs, that there's no way possible they can be successful on a job. So again, someone who might have a substance abuse issue that needs to be addressed. We have resources to treatment, outpatient treatments, and we reach out to those type of things. People who don't have stabilized housing, whether it be shelters or things of that nature. So anything that you can think of that possibly can keep you from not only being successful while in Cara, but while being on a job, we provide those types of resources by using outside sources. We let people who are experts at what they do what they do. We know what our wheelhouse is, and we know we are good at social emotional learning and training and coaching and placements and things like that. So part of those other things, we tap into those resources. People who need a GED. Again, we have GED classes, but we have other resources that come in and we tap into and we partner with to provide those type of services. We partner with Cabrini Green Legal Services, so they provide services to some of the students who are looking to get some of their cases to find out if they're expungible, to get those expunged and things like that. So we use a plethora of resources and referral sources to provide services to students so that don't fit into the expertise that we provide.
And it definitely sounds very different. And one of the other differences that I noticed is you have, created a couple social enterprises. And I'm not talking about you personally, but, you as in Cara. Can you, first of all, before we go into it, can you let us know what a social enterprise is?
Sure. Well, a social, again, my hopes and my purpose is to break some of these kind of terminologies down to someone who might not otherwise know it. I mean, again, into its layman's terms. So the purest way I can kind of explain it to maybe some of the listeners is social enterprise is basically a business. It's a business, and it's geared to make money and to be successful. But it is geared toward a social mission or a social vision that it has. And so it's not a for-profit business. It's a non-for-profit, which means all the funds that it generates, it goes back into the business to provide more and more services and support for that mission that it serves. So, again, our social enterprise is our own companies that we have created that will continue to fund our mission, our beliefs, and our goals to be able to provide services to our students. Otherwise, we would have to depend on a lot of government money, grants, and philanthropy, which we do a large part of, philanthropy and donations and things like that. But as you know, that once you start taking a lot of government money and running your business on grants and things like that, those can be cut off at any moment. And so if that's the bottom line, or when you're getting all of your financial assistance or your financial support through grants and government money and going under the auspices or the rules of what the government deems to be fit, it's not a very sound way to do business. So social enterprises, again, are regular businesses, but they're geared to fit the social needs of whatever that mission is that your organization is striving for.
Okay, great.
In our cases, ours is to alleviate poverty and homelessness. So that's how we've established the businesses that we have. One is Clean Slate, and the other one is Cara Connects, which is our staffing agency.
Okay, great. And those, to me, seem like natural extensions of what you guys are doing anyway.
Yes.
Okay, so what drove Cara's decision to actually start social enterprises?
Well, actually, a need. It was a need.
Mm-hmm.
And early on, a lot of challenges came from individuals who, for example, we'll just use an example, who might have had convictions in their background. All right, so there weren't a lot of companies who are conviction friendly. And so if you find a company that are willing to take an individual with that type of challenge or obstacle, it's fine, but they're one-offs. And it was hard to place a large group of people who had those type of needs by just picking away at it, one company here and one company there. We're really not making a dent in poverty or homelessness, and, it looks good on paper because you hired somebody, but in the real big scheme of things, it really wasn't making much of a dent. And so we, back in 2005, when we came up with the idea, which we got it from a gentleman from Goldman Sachs, who offered one of their top executives to come and do a fellowship for a year to help us establish and create a social enterprise. And the idea and the concept was, instead of going out begging for people to hire up people, how about we start our own business? How about we become our own employers, and as this business grows, we then hire our own. We create a vacuum where people can come in and get transitional training. And then from the way the business grows, we start hiring as it grows. They're going to need managers and supervisors and front office and back office type of positions to be filled. And so that was the idea initially of how that this social enterprise can impact and provide more of a vacuum and more of a support and a resource to individuals that came into our program that had that type of background. Same thing, it's not just criminal background. There's just some people who has never had a high school diploma, or people who never had a job before. So how do you get them experience to get them on a job and get them prepared, and then being able to, when they do get a job and place them on a job, have something to draw from, so they'll have that experience and that knowledge. And so that was the idea of a clean slate initially, and it's grown. It's far exceeded our expectations.
Yes, indeed. Okay, I want to remind our listening audience that you're listening to Nonprofit U, and we're speaking with Jesse Teverbaugh. Jesse is the Director of Student and Alumni Affairs at Cara, and we will open the lines up now to take questions. And if you don't want to call in, you can also post in the chat room. In order to post in the chat room, just click on to a link and you can open a listener-only account very quickly. And if you want to call, the call-in number is 347-884-8121. And if you happen to be in front of the computer and the episode page is on, in case you forget, the number is also on the episode page. Alrighty, so again, when you and I met years ago, I can remember, I believe you were training. It looked like you were taking people through some boot camp exercises.
Well, but, actually, when you and I met, I had left the training department from Cara. We had this idea of this, clean slate. Again, it was just an idea, but the idea was, how do we build this business on the backbone of the concept of what we were teaching in the classroom. And so because I came from the Cara training department, and not to mention that I was a former student, had gone through those kind of things, and in some cases helped develop some of the curriculum and things, how do we take some of those concepts from the classroom, some of that theory, and then apply them everyday work experiences? And so part of that was not only just now then starting getting that business up and running, but again, early on, how do we start developing this experiential type of learning on the job, transitional job training. And so, yes, we had contracts with different business districts for litter abatement and other services that we then started providing. But now, how do you break down the day's activities and get the students or the interns to kind of understand what we did wrong, what we did right for the day, and kind of build on those skills as well. And so when we met, I was actually it was our second crew. We started on 79th Street in Auburn Gresham, and our second contract was in the Quad communities.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, if I remember correctly, my memory is fuzzy. I've had quite a few birthdays since we met. But if I remember correctly, you guys had a contract, I guess, with the business district there to do, cleaning, make sure the commercial strips were kept clean. And you guys had to compete with other businesses, right, for those contracts?
Well, actually, that happened a little later on. We were kind of in on the ground floor when that came in. Wasn't very much competition, and which is a good thing. But I think since we had started, there are a lot of other agencies and things that said, "Wow, that's a great idea," and so other establishments and other organizations kind of came on board and started providing similar services, I will say. I don't think any of them meet up to the expertise or the professionalism that Clean Slate provides, but I can be biased.
Yeah, unbiased
but absolutely. But at the beginning, there wasn't very much competition in that arena in a social enterprise type of idea. There were some contractors and things like that of people who were doing it, but it did not fit into that social enterprise mold.
And and I can say this, I'm not being biased. This is my objective opinion. I think you guys did an awesome job down there on Cottage Grove, and it's just amazing the transformation that is taking place.
47th Street.
You guys.
Yes, and if I can, I would just like to add again, because it is an amazing transformation of what takes place, and kind of proud that I was a part of that. Because even today, of what's going on down on 47th Street, 47th and Cottage Grove, even from Drexel or with Lakeshore Drive, rather, all the way to King Drive, even 10 years ago, is not what you see today. And part of the reason why it has kind of transformed a little now is because they were, and I think President Preckwinkle was the alderman at the time, and they were the Quad Community Development Organization. They were talking to businesses, and they were wanting to come back into the area because it's prime real estate. But no businesses wanted to come into the area. And they would ask and did surveys and things like that to find out, why won't you bring your business to this area? And bar none, the number one reason that they said is because it's dirty. It's dirty. And the first thing at hand was to attract businesses is to just clean up the litter. There was a lot of vacant lots. There was a lot of prime real estate and things that were enticing to businesses, but it was just that, it needed to be cleaned up. And part of it is in just small things that you can imagine that transform the whole community. And within, I would say within a year's time, the difference of just the aesthetic look of standing maybe down on 45th and Cottage Grove and looking all the way down north to 41st or 43rd, it changed. It literally began to change, and the vacant lots that began to be cleaned and things like that. And slowly but surely, it's a prime piece of real estate. It's a prime piece of real estate in that community now. So I would like to think and hope that Clean Slate had an integral part in the transformation of that community. And not only that, was not just about providing litter abatement. It was about being ambassadors, right? So it's about seeing that these people who came from this community, you know what, that might at some point in time people thought took from the community, here they are now wanting to give back, and just given an opportunity, they can become contributors to society as well. And so they weren't just out there working. They were there meeting and greeting business owners, and developing relationships and opening up doors. So it played a very integral part in the transformation of the whole community.
Right. That was what I was going to mention. You know, it wasn't like they were just, quote, unquote, doing their jobs and not interfacing with the community. They became a very integral part. Well, I can't even say became. They already were. But, you know, we have a tendency sometimes to separate ourselves from people who may have had, you know, an experience with, you know, with being an ex-offender or whatever. We tend to separate ourselves, but that was never anything that I observed. It was always integrated. But
to your point, though, Valerie, I know you might have think it was just a slip of words, and you said they didn't become. They truly did become, because part of what we do provide at Cara, when I mentioned about getting that mojo back, a lot of times when you go through these life experiences and you go through these things, you forget who you are. All right, or you forget that you are worthy of the best that life has to offer. And so sometimes it's just got to be planted back into you again. Sometimes it just got to be told to you again. Not that you created for that person, but part of it is this self-actualization that, wow, you know what, look, I can be a part of something good. I can do that. And so a lot of the interns and things like that, they came in not thinking that they were good enough, or they wouldn't be able to get an opportunity. But that's kind of taking that theory from the classroom that I was talking about and providing it into that transitional job and that coaching on the job, where they became these ambassadors, these great ambassadors. It did not start from the beginning like that. It was a process.
And, so speaking of process, you know, you've started with, I guess, being a participant of the program, and then you had several positions, and now you're director of student and alumni affairs. How did that position come about?
So the idea is, as we consider ourselves, or we like to emulate a school. We call our participants students. We don't call them clients. We don't call them participants for the most part, but we call them students. They're adult learners. And part of our whole idea, it's one of our mantras at Cara, is you are worthy of the best that life has to offer. And if I'm going to say that and tell you that, and that you are not your mistake, but it's something that you did that is not who you are, I've got to be able to put my money where my mouth is. And so the whole idea, once we started to grow up as an organization, right, this idea when I was there, it was kind of back in its infancy stages of what do we want to be when we grow up. And this is kind of the vision that we envisioned us being, this kind of university type of atmosphere, this kind of school, if you will, the school of life, professional growth. And so the idea was, how can we emulate this idea of a school? And so we created an environment of that. And if you think of a school or a university, it has a dean of students, or other school. They have a principal and things like that. And the main purpose of that is so there's consistency throughout the enterprise. There's consistency in the messaging. There's consistency in the training. And that even though now there are different portals and there are different ways that we can reach out and assist people from where they are right now, we still want to make sure they all get some of this secret sauce that we think provides that key component to real and lasting success. And part of that is through the curriculum, through the coaching, and through the classes and things like that is part of what my main responsibility is doing. So if you look at it as like the principal of a school or a dean of students or things like that, it's just someone who can have that that eye on that level of excellence, that this is what we do, and to make sure we don't we don't go stray too far away from that.
Okay, so I'm listening to this, and forgive me if I sound like I'm using jargon, but I'm just thinking you're kind of the keeper of the culture, making sure that people continue to do stuff the Cara way.
That's a good way of keeping it. I think a lot of people there would say the same thing. I'm kind of the historian, I'm kind of the old kind of way. I'm stuck in some old kind of traditions and rituals and some of those things, and sometimes through people moving on and learning and going into their own career path, sometimes those traditions and rituals can kind of get lost. But yeah, that's pretty much. I'm definitely proud of that moniker, though. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, what are some of the accomplishments that you guys, have achieved, at least through the alumni program?
Right. So the alumni program actually is in its. Let's see. This is our third year. We're in our third year. And probably one of the accomplishments that I'm most proud of is establishing this alumni association. It had always been a dream of mine because once students kind of get to a certain point, they get that year on the job, and they've had such a great experience, they've always wanted to stay in touch, wanted to give back, wanted to be some way a part of, and kind of way we were designed at the time was there was no official connection that once you made that year on the job that you are still officially attached and part of Cara. And not to mention that, again, just because you have gone through Cara and you've gotten a great experience, life does continue to happen and show up. And so, again, just because that happens, you're not going to ride off into the sunset and live happily ever after. There are going to be opportunities and things and challenges in our life that I'm going to need some support. And so part of it is to, again, this name that we have, Cara, which actually is a Gaelic word meaning friend. And so how do we use this and saying, are you a part-time friend? Are you a friend just once you are a student here? Or once you become a part of Cara and successfully have gone through those things and get in place, that you're a friend for life. And so how do we continue to provide support of this idea of employment and alleviating poverty? Because just because you got a job, sometimes of some of our students, this might be their first job, right? It's a stepping stone. So how do we continue to support, okay, now I've gotten past this. Maybe I didn't have a high school diploma when I got this first entry-level position. I've got a year worth of experience on my belt. I've gone and gotten my GED. Now I'm ready. And again, I mentioned that mojo, getting through employment hope. Now I'm feeling a little good about myself. Now what do I do? And so part of that alumni association now is saying, you know what, you still have a home. We will be there for that little kind of platform to catapult you into that next phase of your life, right? Not only that, once students have started getting jobs and getting new positions, they become hiring managers. They become people who are looking for employees as well, and they reach back into Cara and start bringing people around this idea, each one reach one. We also have a scholarship fund that students who have gone successfully through Cara and their 1 year of employment are eligible for. I have a scholarship fund of $25,000 a year, given away at $2,500 intervals for any education that you might want to enhance your employment marketability, or any training that you might need or things like that. So those are just a few of the things that we use. The same thing as the Alumni Association for any alma mater that you might have, whether it be a university or your high school or things like that. A way to stay connected, a way to support those who have come that are now going through and are now in the journey that you have passed through. I think one of the biggest impacts that they have that you can see on a day-to-day basis, I tell students too, the only way I ask you to thank you, if you want to thank Cara, is once you get your job to come back and give the current class 5 or 10 minutes of your time. Speak to them and tell them the journey that you've gone through. But I can talk to them till I'm blue in the face, and it just becomes, oh, well, Mr. Jesse said. But when they can see a peer of their own or somebody who has actually gone through the struggle and said, yeah, it was hard, and this is what I did to overcome it and things like that, that inspires them. So we're really proud. I know it still is in its infancy stage. We've had 2 annual picnics thus far. We've had a couple of other staple events that we had. So we're just now kind of growing off of that, but it's starting to stabilize and become a real strong contributor to Cara.
That's excellent. And, I think about, different organizations that do this work, and I also think about the Second Chance Act program. And, when we look at the milestones, that the state and federal government tend to give us, you get X number of points for keeping people on the job, 30 days, then 60 days, then 90 days. But, I never once in your vocabulary heard you say 30, 60, or 90 days. For you, it sounds like the floor is 1 year. And with this alumni
1 year
program, with the alumni program kicking in, it seems like you're going to be able to stretch that, and it sounds to me like people are doing better than 1 year anyway. But it sounds to me like you're going to be able to stretch it even further. Are you finding that job retention is better now that you have the alumni program in place?
So not to confuse anybody. So our 1 year is from that we consider you graduate from Cara is that's because we provide that 1 year worth of retention services. So while you're on that job for a year, we provide that supportive services, that anything that can go wrong and possibly we're there to support you. Not to mention that we have relationships with these employment partners. So when something does go awry, you don't wait till it's at the point where you have actually lost your jobs. There's a meeting between the employee, the management, and what we call the IDS, the individual development specialist. That's what every student gets. And we kind of figure out, okay, what's the challenge? What's going wrong? How can we get back on track? And so, again, we would like to be able to provide those retention services for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years up. But we understand that those are resources and finances that go along with that. So maybe at some point in the future, we might be able to extend that retention services further than a year. But right now, it's just from a year. That retention services stops at that year. And again, part of what the Alumni Association does is it does not just cut off all connection and all services. Again, we have the Alumni Association through events to be able to stay connected, to be able to stay plugged in, and that kind of thing as well.
Okay, excellent. All righty. I just want to remind folks that we have Jesse Teverbaugh, the Director of Student and Alumni Affairs at Cara here. He's really giving us some great information, and we will not always have this opportunity. Jesse is a very busy man and I can't say he doesn't get out much, but when he's out, he's working for right? So he's not going to have time to do this kind of thing very often. It took us, 90 days to get to this point. So you guys, you better call in if you have some questions, because you're not going to get this opportunity unless you run up on Jesse in the street.
I wish I was as busy as you say. It makes it sound like I have a social life.
This is one busy guy. So I'm telling you guys, call in 347-884-8121. If you don't do anything else but tell Jesse how good a job he and Cara are doing, I think that would be great. And if not, we will continue with the show. I'm learning a lot if nobody else is, and I'm sure anybody who is listening is also learning a lot. So I guess another question, employers always want to know, well, what's in it for me? Because you're typically dealing with people that are, like you said, they may have challenges, may not feel that they'll ever work again or whatever, and sometimes this can present a challenge in the workplace. So why would an employer want to hire a Cara graduate? What are some of the advantages?
So I can give you some of the feedback that we get from our employment partners. One of the things that you're getting from a Cara student is you're getting a committed worker. One, you're getting someone who is saying, you know what, I will commit to staying on this job for at least minimally 1 year. Turnover in the workplace is the number one reason why companies are bleeding money. It's turnover rate. We ask, and even our curriculum, the way we design a curriculum, it's not because we think we're brilliant. We say, okay, how about we teach this? We ask employment partners, what do you have or find challenging with your employees? And the number one thing that every last one of them has said, bar none, is attendance and absenteeism. People just won't come to work. So in the end, in some cases, some employment partners have said, you know what, we really don't care if they don't have the full skill set to do the job. If they come to work, we will teach them. So part of the number one thing is what can they, the reasons why they would want a Cara student is they're going to get a committed employee. One who is committed to coming to work and giving 100%. And if you want to follow some Cara lingo, we're going to show up and we're going to show out. And because part of that is that culture that we create, that they understand that their opportunity is not just for them. They have a responsibility to go open up doors for others who are coming behind them, because the reason they have an opportunity is because someone opened up the door for them. But not to mention just on those things, they have been given, we have these competencies and these skill sets that we concentrate on, whether it be conflict management, team building, professionalism, and communication. Those are the kind of courses and the curriculum that we teach. So once they get on the job, they're not so out of water or out of place. They know how to conduct themselves in certain situations. They're almost bred, for lack of a better term, they're almost there and ready to be able to fit in and to work at a high level. That little break, that time when you first start a new job and that transitional period before you can start really hitting the ground running, it's very small between Cara students. And a lot of times it's a good thing to have, but sometimes they run into difficult because when they get there, they outwork some of the people that have been there for years, and they find a little rift between that, and they start moving up rapidly. And the first thing the employers say, you know what, send me another one of those. Send me another one of those Angelas, or send me another one of those Josephs, or things like that. And so those are kind of the things that theory and those things that we do in the classroom that transcend past the classroom to the workplace. And a lot of times those are those social and emotional learning type things. They're not just those hard skills. Those are those soft skills. And if you really ask me, I believe nowadays the soft skills are becoming those hard skills. And so through our curriculum, even in our curriculum, we think it's not just all about the professional development. We're very big on personal development as well. And so we do classes on love and forgiveness and things like that, because if you imagine people who have gone through some of these life experiences, no matter what walk, some of it is traumatic stress disorder. Sometimes you go through these situations and and you're just traumatized. And at some point in time, you begin to say, F it, forget it. I give up. I don't care. I don't care about you or nothing else, because when I care about something, I hurt too much. And so we begin to start numbing ourselves with all kind of other negative things, and we get to a point to start being the very thing that we were created to be, and that's a human being. But with being a human being, we respond to stimuli. We feel. And so now once you're starting to get back and being a healthier human being, now you got to connect those nerve endings so they're firing in the right direction. You know, if you see a light pole or electricity wire that just kind of came loose on a storm and it's just all around the street just hanging and wiggling all over the place, it still has power, but it's all over because it's not connected. And so when human beings, when we come out of these traumatized situations, whether it's domestic violence or being incarcerated for periods of time, or histories of substance abuse, or lack of education, or just being in the neighborhoods and environment, something that we come from, or maybe it could even be that, you know what, I've had a job for 20 years and my company decides to lay me off. And that's how I identified myself, with my job. And I had a nice place, and all my friends came over my house for barbecues, and they looked up to me. And all of a sudden, I don't have any of that anymore. Sometimes that takes away who your identity is and your self-esteem.
Right.
Maybe you're middle-aged and the husband decides to leave the family, or the woman decides that I've identified myself as this mother or this father, and the kids maybe have gone out of the house and now I'm left alone. You know, all of those sap and just suck the energy and sometimes the life out of some people. And so those things, when you talk about social and emotional learning, you know, how do you get them start connecting and caring again? Because if you cannot care for another human being, then there's no way possibly you can care about a job or another employer or anything like that. So part of this whole idea that we are really have invested heavily in is that how about we have this holistic idea of professional and personal development. And we believe in that wholeheartedly. That's the whole holistic approach that we take with all of our training and coaching.
Mm-hmm. Well, so you've been at this for 15 years. What are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way?
I've learned, to put it in cliche, that don't nothing change but the faces. The stories stay the same. Human beings are human beings. There's nothing you can tell me that I've not heard before. A lot of times we kind of think that I'm wearing this X on my forehead, or I've got this cloud of bad luck, or that I'm cursed or something, because we think we're the only ones going through it. And so we tend to suffer through it alone. But when you find out and begin to open up and share your experiences with others, and find out, you know what, there's some powerful people out there that I can learn from their experiences, and not to mention I can help somebody through my experiences. That's where you start empowering yourselves, and you think of yourselves as some outside of yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you ask one of those, that's the main one. You know, life don't discriminate. Don't nothing change but the faces.
Yes. And then, you know, I'm wondering, how can people enroll in the Cara program? I mean, this sounds very interesting, and I'm sure there's someone who's listening right now. If this is not a program for you, you probably know someone who could benefit. So, Jesse, if you can tell us how people can enroll in the program and what their requirements are.
Well, if you're interested, we have if you're looking at our service delivery model, there is a recruitment team. They do an astounding job at tapping into referral sources and other type of resources to provide individuals to come into our enterprise. But we would like to start there as at the recruitment stage, and that way, through their screening, they can find out which model best fits you and your needs as well. And again, all of this is beginning and starts with developing relationships and getting to know the individual themselves. So you can call area code 212-798-3300 and ask to be transferred to the recruitment team, and they'll transfer you to any one of our 3 recruiters, and they can get the process started there.
Well, and that's perfect time. And on that note, it is 3:00, and we have come to the end of our show. Is there one final note that you want to share with the listening audience before we go, and then also remind people how they can get in touch with you? They may have other questions, too. They may want to try this at home, and we want to pick your brain.
Like I mentioned, if you are interested, or if you just have some more questions you can would like answered, you can call that number 312-798-3300. Also, if you happen to be an employer and are looking for employees, please either go on our website, which is www.carachicago.org. And also there's a link in there where potential employers, if you're interested on how you get involved in becoming an employment partner, we would love to develop a relationship. Same with volunteerism. If you're looking to volunteer, we could not do a lot of the work we do without a strong volunteer base. And not to mention any type of philanthropy or contributions that you're just looking to support an organization that's truly making a difference out in the community that you live in. All of those, and you can access through our website, www.carachicago.org.
That was awesome, and I thank you so much for being a guest, Jesse. Thank you. And I want to thank our listening. I want to thank our listening audience too. I know you didn't call in, but I know that there are several of you who are listening and for whatever reason didn't want to make your presence known through chatting or calling it. I want to let you know that we definitely appreciate you too. If you have any questions, again, you can contact Jesse, contact me. He gave you his contact number, and I also included a slide, with his contact number too, just in case. So we've come to the end of the show, and we're going to have to go now, and the recording will be available for download within about an hour. And make sure you tune in next week. Our guest is going to be Tom Feckman. He's the Senior Program Officer at the Community Memorial Foundation. So until then, you take care. Now, you take care too, Jesse.
All right, thanks a lot. Make it a great day.
All right, you too.